What's the very first thing and maybe the very last thing we do in this world? We cry. At birth, it's the proof that we are alive. At the end, it is often the only thing left. We cry before we know language, and sometimes long after words have failed. We cry when we lose. We cry when we remember. We cry when we laugh too hard, when we are overwhelmed by joy, when we hear a song that takes us back. We cry when silence breaks us and when music heals us. Before alphabets, before nations, our ancestors carved their truth into air, not stone. They passed down memory through breath. They didn't write, they sang. Across deserts and mountains, they carried knowledge in melody. They mapped the stars with chants, encoded medicine in rhythm, and told their history one chorus at a time. And those sounds are still with us, in folk songs, in sacred rituals, in street music, protest chants, and bedtime lullabies. We sang to survive, and then we sang to remember. This is how music became our first language. I am Kemal Oksal, professor at Berklee College of Music. For over 20 years, I've worked as a music producer, conductor, and educator, leading orchestras, producing albums, and mentoring young artists. Now, I invite you to discover the stories that shape what we hear. Each week, I open the words behind the music, and whether you are a musician or not, you are invited. So, let's get started. Have you ever heard of the singing Neanderthal theory? It might sound like sci-fi, but it's actually a serious idea in evolutionary science. Archaeologist Stephen Maiden believed that before we developed language, early humans communicated through a kind of musical vocalization, something emotional, physical, and rhythmic. Not words, but tones. Not grammar, but gesture. A mix of melody, movement, and mimicry. He called it holistic, multimodal, manipulative, musical, and mimetic. They weren't just making noise, they were connecting with cries, with hums, rising tones, and gestures. They passed on what mattered most: danger, belonging, comfort, territory, and curiosity. And neuroscientist Daniel J. Levitin takes this even further. He says we weren't just using music to communicate emotion, we were using it to store information. In his words, before humans could write, they sang. They encoded knowledge into songs about how to survive, where the dangerous animals were, what plants to eat or avoid. In other words, music wasn't entertainment. It was the original Wikipedia, the oldest user manual we ever made. And it was passed down voice to voice, breath to breath. Think about it. When information is too important to forget, we sing it. Lullabies, rituals, folk tales. Even today, we teach children the alphabet through melody. We remember prayers through chant, protest through rhythm. Because rhythm, melody, and groove aren't just beautiful, they are our original code, the emotional operating system of memory. So maybe before we understood the world, we sang to remember it. And in some cultures, they still do. In many parts of the world, this idea that music carries knowledge isn't a theory. It's a living tradition. Before there were books, there were ballads. Before alphabets, there were chants. Before the written word, there was the remembered sound. Not just to express, but to instruct, to preserve, to pass down. In Aboriginal Australia, elders sing song lines. Melody is so precise, they describe water sources, paths, landmarks. You don't read a map, you sing it, often accompanied by clapstick or didgeridoo. Senegal, griots are oral historians and memory keepers who trace ancestry, politics, and legend. With the kora, a 21-string harp lute, they sing timelines that stretch back 1,000 years. In Turkey, Aşık poets travel from town to town, sharing tales of morality, resistance, and love. Their bağlama isn't just accompaniment, it's an instrument of memory tuned to the stories of generations.
Şakıyıp dalında bülbüller öter, aman aman aman. Sebep aman aman aman, ben yandım aman.
Among the Quechua people, music is woven into life, not separate from it. The siku, a pan flute, and charango guide rituals for planting, grieving, and celebration. Each melody encodes local knowledge, weather, harvest cycles, and healing. From Puerto Rico to Chile, the Decima, poetic 10-line songs, preserve rural history, philosophy, and identity. Sung with cuatro or harp, they turn oral poetry into generational recall.
Díganme quién puedo ser, hijo de centella y rayo, díganme quién puedo ser.
In the Mongolian steppe, Urtin Du, long song, stretches a single word over an entire breath. The Morin Kur, a horsehead fiddle, echoes the land and the gallop of memory. These songs are maps of nomadic life, carried on the wind. Among the Inuit, women share songs through katajak, a throat-singing tradition. It's rhythmic, mimetic, and born of survival, imitating animals, weather, and the spirits of the land. Again, a bond, a form of knowledge passed face to face. The Vedas, among humanity's oldest spiritual texts, were sung for centuries before they were ever written, passed down with precise melody and timing. without instruments, relying on only voice as memory. In Morocco and Algeria, Gnawa music is both spiritual and historical. The gimri, a three-string bass lute, drives trance rhythms passed from generation to generation. These songs carry healing rituals, coded resistance, and ancestral memory. In parts of the Balkans, especially in Kosovo, Albania, and North Macedonia, women gather to sing together in circles, often while spinning a metal tray on their fingertips. It's more than a show of balance, it is a ritual, a rite of passage, a form of memory in motion. The songs, often sung without instruments, carry generations of wisdom, grief, and joy, passed down from mothers to daughters at weddings, births, and farewells. The tray itself becomes part of the rhythm, humming, trembling, echoing the fragility and strength of life. And if you have seen my episode on the Anthem of No Land, you already know how deeply music can carry memory, identity, and migration. In northern Greece, polyphonic singing fills mountains with harmony and drone. These communal songs mourn, bless, and remember.
Καρδιά με 18 κλειδιά, νόπο είσαι κλειδωμένη.
Often accompanied by the lauto or lira. The voice here is both ancient ritual and living thread. In many Native American traditions, songs are gifts, not compositions. They carry law, medicine, cosmology, passed through frame drums, breath, and voice. Some songs are only sung in specific seasons, others only by ancestry. Among the Navajo, or in their language, Diné, sacred chants guide 9-day healing rituals like the night chant. The Ojibwe pass Medawevin songs through medicine societies using water drums and rattles. In the Lakota Sundance, vocables are sung not to explain, but to carry spirit led by the communal big drum. These songs are not composed, they are received, and only sung by the right people in the right moment. In Western China, Huaya songs are improvised across mountaintops. Sung in dialect, they share news, flirtation, and local history, echoing across valleys like living ladders. In Georgia, polyphony is more than harmony. It's a national identity. With interlocking vocal lines that date back thousands of years, songs are sung during feasts, funerals, and sacred rites. Accompanied by the panduri, a three-string lute, these harmonies encode ancestral memory in sound. In Japan, Shomyo, a Buddhist chant, has been preserved for over 1,000 years. Performed by monks, its melodic patterns hold sacred text and reflective rhythm. In epic storytelling, the biwa, a short-necked lute, accompanies sung tales of war and destiny, where music becomes moral instruction, memory, and spiritual guide. In some parts of the world, language isn't just spoken, it's whistled. On the island of La Gomera, the Silbo Gomero whistle language echoes across canyons, carrying full sentences through pitch and rhythm. Also in Turkey's Black Sea region, villagers used ıslık dili, a whistled form of Turkish, to send messages across mountainsides. These aren't songs, but real linguistic systems shaped by geography and breath, and they remind us melody alone can carry meaning, even when words are gone. So when you hear a grandmother's lullaby or an old folk song whispered in dialect, you are not just listening to music, you are listening to instructions for life, sung across time. Most of us have heard a lullaby from a grandmother, an auntie, or a caregiver. These lullabies may sound simple, but many carry centuries of experience of migration, resilience, celebration, and survival. In fact, every lullaby has a story, and this topic alone could fill an entire episode. So I won't go too deep today, but I would love to hear from you. If your family has a lullaby, a melody passed down, or a story sung to you as a child, share it in the comments, because maybe that's where part 2 begins. This is how humanity remembered itself, one chorus at a time. It is tempting to think that all of this, the rituals, the chants, the folk songs, lives only in the past. But the truth is, some of the oldest music on earth is still being made. Not in museums, on festival stages, on streaming platforms, in viral videos. It just wears different clothes. Let's start in Siberia, where a group called Ötüken is doing something remarkable. Their sound channels the spirits of the Chulin people, blending traditional singing, mouth harps, leather drums, and electronic textures. Much like the ancient shamanic rhythms, their music maps the landscape with sound, its memory and movement, preserved but not frozen. Shift to the northern territory of Australia and you'll feel the heartbeat of Yothu Yindi and Kingston Red. They build on the songlines we explored earlier, using didgeridoo, clapsticks, and Yongu language to echo the ancestral maps of land and love. But now it's carried through electric guitars and surf rock. Same coordinates, new compass. Cross the ocean to Canada, where the hallucination turns the sacred pulse of the powwow drum into a full-bodied digital force. Like the Lakota Sundance or Ojibwe Midewibin chants, their tracks are not entertainment, they are activation, music that dances and decolonizes at once. In Brazil, the band Arando-Araquá sings in Tupi, reviving the voices of indigenous Amazonian peoples through the lens of heavy metal. The weight of their sound mirrors the depths of rainforest mythology, just as the Quechua charango once did for the mountain life. Loud doesn't mean disconnected, it means alive. In Peru, Lenin Tamayo sings in Quechua, connecting the decima and Andean folk melody into reggaeton and urban beats. He's not borrowing, he's continuing, singing the harvest cycles and highland wisdom, but this time with viral reach. Further north, artists like Tanya Tagak, Shaina Novalinga, and Pilksilk bring Inuit Katajak into electronic textures. These are not museum performances. They are living, pulsing expressions of the same throat games we saw face-to-face among Inuit women, now heard in clubs, galleries, and headphones. And in the United States and Colombia, Combo Chimbita blends Afro-Indigenous cosmology with psychedelic rock. Their sound mirrors the layered rhythms of Gnawa and the improvisation of Ashik poets. Ancestral energy dressed in distortion. These artists don't ask whether tradition belongs in the modern world. They prove that it already does. The chants become verses. The drums found microphones. The stories evolved, but the soul stayed the same. We didn't stop singing. We just changed the rhythm, swept instruments, and kept going. With the same spirit, just a new sound. So we return to the very first sound, that first cry, the one that proves that we are alive. Before we knew how to speak, we already knew how to feel, and we expressed it the only way we could, through sound. Not yet language, but music. And we never stopped. We sang across deserts, whispered across oceans, danced our stories into forests, etched memories into lullabies. Folk songs become family, chants become ancestry, rituals become resistance. Even now, whether it's a grandmother humming in a kitchen or a stranger looping throat singing over lo-fi beats on a subway, we are still telling the same story. The one about where we come from and who we are. Because before we had countries or even alphabets or even words, we had a song. And that song, in some form, still plays. So, if you hear it, listen. If you carry it, keep it alive. And if you have never shared it, maybe it is time. After all, we sang before we spoke, and music was our first language. See you on the next one.